Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Myths and Stories, a Destiny 2 lore podcast. We are continuing our series on the history of the Eliksni / Fallen. Last time we had talked about kind of our initial dealings with the House of Dusk going into Destiny 2, Mithrax finding a fire team of his own, the Scorn Barons before the Scorn were a race, and then ended things off with Fickrol the Fanatic being found and resurrected by a corrupted Prince Aldrin into the first Scorn race. And then the subsequent dismemberment of the Kell of the House of Kings and the taking over of the previous House of Kings, Eliksni, and other members of the House of Dusk to start making Aldrin and Fickrol's Scorn army. And that was kind of where we left things off. So tonight, now we know this from our Awoken series, where we cover Aldrin in particular during a portion of that. We know kind of Aldrin's side of the story from that, and we know that eventually he ends up in the Prison of Elders, seemingly of his own volition. Seemingly he gave himself up to be imprisoned there. And we also know that these Scorn Barons that we talked about before were captured by Pt.6 and Petrovenge and a group of other guardians that Cade put together. Again, you can see those adventures in the Destiny comic book that came out around the same time as Forsaken. And those barons that survived the shootout also ended up in the Prison of Elders. So that's kind of setting the stage for where things are at before we dive into new stuff.
Yay, new stuff. We got some good readings tonight. We haven't had a real good like lore entry reading in a little bit, because a lot of the stuff that we've been covering the last couple of episodes have all been, cutscenes in game or missions in game, and there's been a few Grimoire cards here and there, a few armor sets, a few guns and stuff to read the lore tabs on. But yeah, this will be our first like real big lore reading in a couple of weeks. So I'm excited for this one, because this is the book that we're diving into is the most loyal book for Variks, and it's so Variks, trying to kind of set the scene and the mindset here. Variks at this point in time is kind of the last of the old world Eliksni. He's obviously the only House Judgment, the last of that. And a few episodes ago, when we ended one, he was looking at how down his people was, and how they truly deserve to be fallen. Like maybe that's their lot in life. And at this point in time, he's been advisor to Mara. He's in charge of the Prison of Elders. He's the main warden there, and as such, as being the warden of a giant prison, he gets to roam the halls essentially, and that's kind of what this most loyal book is about. Is a lot of stuff from Variks in the Prison of Elders. Post where would this be at in the timeline? This is I guess it would start post Aldrin capture and would be pre-Forsaken.
Yeah, and actually it starts a little bit before the capture of Aldrin. So we're going to be rewinding just a touch to see kind of Variks's perspective of a few events. The main one being where this book starts is the attack of the Red Legion on the city, and kind of the Reef's response to that. And Variks seeing that response and the small part he plays in it. So we go back a little ways to just kind of follow those events along from Variks' point of view and then into stuff that we haven't talked about yet, including the capture of Aldrin and what comes next. But yeah, he has been struggling for a long time at this point with kind of a identity crisis, a culture crisis. He doesn't really know who his people are trying to be anymore. And it certainly isn't who he remembers them being, at the very least.
Absolutely.
So we are going to start tonight with, again, this is the lore book Most Loyal, which came out with Forsaken. And the chapter we are starting with is called Splinter of Bone. And it goes like this. Deep in the heart of the prison of elders, Variks of House Judgment clutched a splinter of bones as he watched the solar system burn. The facility had been outfitted over the years with massive sensor grids, slaved to arrays spread across the reef. They gave him a detailed analysis of the Red Legion's fury. The light from the monitors was the only illumination in the room as his arms flew across the controls. Relaying warnings to Petra and the Awoken, he could already see the remainder of the Awoken fleet disappearing off of his scopes, going into hiding. Relaying warnings to the city, though he could see he was far too late. Their comms were gone. There was no one left to listen. Relaying warnings to his people. With the end of the houses, there were so few who would listen. But if he could save even a handful. While his hands worked, his eyes remained fixed on the screens, watching death, destruction, and horror. In his role working with the Guardians of the City, he had pored over the distress signal from the Dantalian Pt.6. Source Green Raven had sent bursts of analyses to this tower at least a dozen times since the days of the Taken War. But he'd never expected a number of this magnitude. With the systems of the last city offline, he had no problem dialing sensors over the wall. He'd been able to see with clarity the home of humanity, with a resolution where he could make out parks and lakes and marketplaces. These same sensors let him watch, grinding the bone in his mechanical fist, as people died, as the great machine was yoked, as the Guardians fell. Scrambling, he alerted the crows, but something went wrong. The network had fallen dark. Each and every crow was offline. All that is, save for one. Through a garbled image, he saw a hand, an awoken hand, but it almost immediately fell to static. He wanted to care. He wanted to feel something for them. What dominated his thoughts, though, what made a ticking noise emanate deep in his voice synth, was the growing fear that the Queen's plan had failed. He sat back in his chair, thinking. The prison of elders orbited far enough away from the core awoken outposts, and thus far enough away from the Cabal's phalanx, that it might come out of this unscathed. Nonetheless, he initiated lockdown procedures, prepared for the worst. A comm ping, confirmation. Petra Venge and the limited forces at her command evacuated what settlements they could and disappeared into the nooks and crannies of the reef. She would be unable to send help to the prison. First, House Judgment, then House Wolves, then Kel Mara Sov, and now he could feel the rest of his adopted people slipping away from him. With one of his mechanical arms, he crushed the splinter of bone to dust. And that's the end of that chapter.
There's such a sense of helplessness in this one. Like it's he can watch and he can send messages out, but he as the lone, I mean, the lone Eliksni at this point. Like to me, at least through Variks's eyes, the rest of his people are fallen. Like
Mm-hmm.
they are truly that level of no longer being Eliksni. And the only other person, um, well, I guess I don't know that Variks would have had comms or anything with him. Mithrax would be the only other, um, what I would consider true Eliksni, but I don't know if that I don't that's, I think, later in the year of that first
Yeah.
year of D2. But yeah, it's this true sense of helplessness watching the death, destruction, and horror of this city being, because and this is something that I again, this is something that I'm a little sad that had to leave Destiny to make room for more Destiny. um, the initial mission or two of, and the initial cutscene and all of that of the attack on the city was, I mean, truly brutal. Like it was all out destruction everywhere, and the Cabal hit hard and fast, and like tons died like that. Like we as Guardians lost our light. It was a very 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 rough time. um and then to be somebody just sitting on the other side of a monitor, just watching it happen, completely helpless. Like it's kind of a, it's really sad. um and then the he tries to reach out to the Crow network. um I think at that point in time, that was where Crow was stuck on Mars, and he was gathering all the different crows that he could, trying to get his ship working again, trying to get off Mars at this point in time.
Yeah, or at
Post
least
Taken War.
somewhere in his wanderings post Taken
Yep.
War, he hadn't really formed any groups at this point. He hadn't, he wasn't in with the House of Kings yet. He was just kind of aimless,
Yeah.
following that influence that was driving him.
And then that idea of like the Queen's plan had failed. Like that to me is like the ultimate, like, well, shit, now what?
Yeah, yeah,
Like that to me is that's my seeing of through Variks's eyes of this whole thing. And then even Petra's like, yeah, we've abandoned everything. We can't send help. Do what you can.
yeah.
But yeah.
So in a very desolate spot, and it offers a little in-game explanation for why the Awoken never really played a part in vanilla D2.
Oh, sure.
And it's essentially, especially for a race that went to war with a large Eliksni house in the past, specifically to prevent a catastrophe on Earth, to just not be there for the next one, the next similar
Yeah.
event. But it just they did not have the people. They didn't have the military might to be of any
Because
use.
they're still recovering from the battle of Saturn. It's the slaughter of Saturn is what it was.
Yeah. I mean, even now in game, the Awoken are a shadow of what they
Yeah.
used to be as
Oh,
far
yeah.
as military might and capability to assist.
Could you imagine if the singularity were to open up again and more Awoken poured out of the distributary?
It would be amazing. They would be even older.
Billions of years older.
Yeah. I
Would they even remember Marasov? Would they even remember the Theodicy War and stuff like that? God, that
maybe
would be.
not.
Would they even be Awoken?
Does that pocket universe even exist, or did it reach its heat death?
Right. Or with Mara leaving it, did that blip it out of existence? Does it even exist anymore because it was Mara's thinking to bring it there in the first place?
Yeah, I don't think it was tied to her in that way after it was created. Like, I think it would, its energies were its own. She just
Sure.
directed them. But yeah.
Yeah. Awoken pretty much obliterated, or not obliterated, Awoken very much in a bad spot to help here.
Yeah.
And Variks just feeling very helpless.
Yeah. So the next chapter, we do fast forward a little bit more to where we left off last week, and that is with the capture of the Scorn Barons. So this next chapter is titled Less is More, and it goes like this. Variks watched Petra's corsairs march their latest prize into the cell block, a gaggle of ether-starved dregs bearing the mark of the scorned barons. Nearby, Petra drummed her fingers along the hilt of her knife. Her eyes glinted with envy. She held on to this prison as if it was the last thing she could control. Perhaps it was. Between the scattered remnants of the Red Legion and the scorned barons running rampant through the reef, the Awoken had little left to call their own. There were little left of the Awoken. Variks sighed. Only a true Kell understood that survival was not a game of waiting, and Petra Venge, for all her military prowess, was no Kell. In a world without Kells, Dreg strength will breed nothing but chaos, Variks whispered to himself, the old Rain proverb, wishing for the return of the decisive days of his queen, his Kell. What did you say? Petra asked without looking at him. Chaos, he replied. These dregs breed chaos. Petra scoffed. They're fallen, and where there's fallen there will inevitably be guardians. She turned on her heel and walked away. I leave you to your judgment, Variks. Locate the hole in which these scorned barons cower. She stopped and turned back to him. Might want to up your rations, too. You're looking a bit gaunt. She smiled, patted him on the back, and continued on her way. He watched her go. If his anatomy had allowed for it, he would have smiled in kind. Hers was a heart, always in the right place, even if the outcome of her decisions was less than ideal. She did not, however, fully appreciate the threat these scorned barons posed. He had tried to warn her when they were just 7 dregs and a heretical archon. Now their terror was spreading throughout the reef, with more and more fallen answering the Baron's anarchistic call. She was right about one thing, though. He could stand to increase his intake. The very thought of it made Variks thirsty for the flow. Like all his kind since the appearance of the Red Legion, he had been forced to ration his intake. He had never felt so weak, so close to death. But he would survive, as he always had. Variks knew the time would inevitably come when he would have to survive on his own. And that's the end of that chapter.
I like this one because it gives a little bit of Variks' perspective on Petra. Like the where he said wishing for the return of the decisive days of his queen, of his Kell, and for all of Petra's military prowess, she was no Kell. And so it, like, he respects her obviously, and even sees her as kind. Like, you know, towards the end he would smile if his anatomy allowed him to. But and seeing that her heart's always in the right place, but then she doesn't always appreciate the level of ferocity that can come, like
right.
with these scorned, and he puts that in quotation, scorned barons. But the idea that these barons are essentially terrorists,
yeah, kind of,
and anarchistic terrorists, because like I don't know why I never thought of, like, every time I've thought about the Barons, I've always thought of them as just like, oh, there's just the 7 of them and their Archon, right? Like that's it. Um, but to think of them as like a rallying force, right? To think of like different Fallen throughout the reef and the system, going, oh, hey, these guys are kicking ass and taking names. Like, why don't we join these guys? And they don't have a kell. They don't give a shit about anything. They're just living life, taking what they want and killing the rest. Why don't we join those guys? I've never thought of Fallen in that sense of thinking of them as willing to join there. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's an interesting view on Variks's thought of the Scorn Barons, the kind of state of the Fallen, and his views towards Petrovins throughout this.
Yeah, we're looking at a time period where there's kind of 3 camps that the Eliksni are falling, no pun intended, into. We have Spider, who is building up his, mafia, essentially.
It's merchandising.
He's building up his own force, buying loyalty with food and
Yep.
fair treatment, at least as far as we saw in that one lore card. We have the House of Dusk, which is desperately trying to hold on to this house this house social structure, and it is being a force of uniting what would have been previously rival houses all together. And then these barons, these scorned barons, are kind of offering a third route. And not to say that Spider's route isn't criminal, but this feels very much more like Wild West outlaws kind of versus a mafia. This is the chaos. Group of bandits that they don't want to answer to any kind of authority. They don't want to answer to the law, be it Eliksni or Awoken or Guardian or whatever. They just want to go out and take what they want, and that's the only rule.
Variks puts it best: chaos. These dregs breed chaos.
Yeah,
that's just all they are.
And they started as just 7 plus the Archon, which we learn is Fickrel, and the 7 being the 7 barons from Forsaken.
We still missed one of them. We couldn't figure out the last one.
But during this point in time, like, their numbers are growing. Like they have other Eliksni flocking to them that are carrying the mark. I don't know if that means like literally branded or if it's just same as like a house flag kind of thing.
Oh, sure, like the banners they carry around with the sigil on it.
Yeah, but they've gathered a following at the very least for them to start generating new members that are being incarcerated, essentially.
Yeah.
So we get a little more about those barons in the next chapter here, which is called Roll Call. And this one goes like this. After the Taken War, the scorned barons banded together in a time of weakness to become strong, to prey on anyone and anything that practiced the old Eliksni ways. They began with the one thing their people needed to survive: ether. In a way, the barons had become heads of a new house, priests in their own rights and arbiters of their own trials. The terror they unleashed had almost grown as powerful as any kell. These heathens were not Eliksni. They were more fallen than any of their brethren. They were everything Judgment had sought to purge before the whirlwind, and now they sat rotting deep in the prison of elders. Cade and his 6 had done good by their word. Variks's staff tapped lightly on the floor plates, and chuckling noises emanated from his throat. He hobbled past their cells as the servitors hummed to life. Feeding time. He saw hatred in every cell he passed, bathed in the light of flowing ether, Their eyes carved at his flesh, saw him docked 1,000 times more. Variks the rider, the untamed. She and her crew spread terror and disease with their noxious pikes. Eliksni the machinist. She used stolen Cabal telemetry and gravity traps to sabotage vessels, relieve them of their cargo, and haul the hulks back to their own shipyard chop shops. Pura the blind, the ghost of Hellrise Cavern, who haunted the Baron's territory with phantom decoys and ended all trespassers from the shadows. Rexus Vaughn the Godslayer, the hangman. He had secreted away the ether stores of his victims and driven the barons and their followers into a frenzy with the tainted feast. Araxis the wit, the traitor, the trickster, a mastermind, a liar, thief, and backstabber. Canix Two-Finger, the mad bomber. The dangers of the reef had multiplied 100-fold with his mines hidden on every rock and dusty corner of the belt. And most disgusting of them all, Hirax, the mind-bender. This one found in the hive a way to infect the minds of the Eliksni. Only one was missing. Fikrul, the heretic, the fanatic. One Variks once dared to call friend back when the Archon tended to Calyx Prime. Before his betrayal, he hoped the fanatic was dead. Cade had assured him that he was. And what was Pt.6 if not reliable? Laughing, burbling to himself, Variks shut off the lights in the hallway, and the barons were plunged once more into darkness. And that's the end of that card.
So here we got them. This is the list. I swear we got all these. The only one I don't think I remember is Pariah the Blind, but we'll go through all of them. So Variks the writer, that she is what she is. She the whole mission. Now again, this is kind of zooming forward a little bit to when we face them as Scorned, or as actual Scorn, the race, not the Scorned Barons. That's so confusing that they called themselves that. But it's almost like they took that name on as their race because they were the Scorned Barons. Like I fully understand that, but it's still super confusing. So we have Variks the writer. That was a fun. You had to face every single one of these throughout the Forsaken campaign and hunt them down and kill them. And so Variks, you rode around on pikes and had to chase her down with the noxious pikes. I remember that because she kept spreading the fumes as she was going. The machinist, she's got this big old tank on her back that launches. It literally looks like she has a walker tank attached to her back. Like she's just walking around with one attached to her back. Pariah the Blind, which again, that's the one that I'm kind of drawing a blank on. That I don't remember that one as much as I remember the other ones.
I think Pariah, is that the rifleman?
That's what I thought. That's got to be, right?
Because there's no other decoys.
Yeah, yes, that's it. Because when you face that one, you're in this huge cavern, this huge open cave, and she like pops like 30 decoys, and you have to kill all of them before it reveals the real. That's okay. Yeah, that's got to be the rifleman. Then you have Rexus Vaughn, the Godslayer, the Hangman. That room that you fight that one in, that one's probably the hardest one of all of them. I feel like, because you're in this super tight cramped space, and he is literally, or he is just terrorizing you with this big old like mace. It's that one's a rough one. That was a genuine rough fight. Araxis the wit, the traitor, the trickster. The only reference to that one currently is if you run Warden of Nothing and you get to the chest at the bottom of the fall right before the final boss, and Drifter's like, "Ha ha! The trickster left you a present." That That one was all about like you'd go to pick up an engram and it would explode in your face. It'd be a bomb. I love the next one, Canik's two finger, because clearly making bombs is a bit of a, I don't know, what would you call that? Workplace hazard? Is that hobby hazard? I don't know what to make of that. But yeah, Canik's two finger, the Mad Bomber. That one was another one. Like you chase him through and he's just everything's just getting blown up in that one. And then the most disgusting of all, and this one I absolutely love this one above all else. Variks, the Mindbender, because he literally had his own ascendant realm. He took the idea of the hive and was like, well, let's amp that up to 11 and apply it to the Eliksni people. If they can do it, we can do it too. And there was something about that, something about the idea of an Eliksni saying, the hive seem to be thriving, and they're doing all this shit with the ascendant realms and our oversouls and all this other stuff. Why don't we do that? Why don't we just start doing that and see if we start thriving? So that was, I truly, that one was to me the most frightening of all of them, just because of that idea that there is more than just one way to make my people great, and his way being that ascendant realm way.
And I think Variks in particular, he's described as the heretic, the traitor. We have to remember that Oryx presumably was the one that attacked Reese during the whirlwind. And
right.
With, I would assume, Taken and Hive. And so for an Eliksni to kind of throw in with the Hive, the very race that destroyed Reese or was responsible for destroying Reese, like that's a special kind of betrayal.
Yeah, that's a giant middle finger to the entire Eliksni people. Wow, that just makes it more terrifying.
Oh yeah,
that truly does. And then of course the only one missing, Fikrul, the fanatic. Then we read about that last week, the whole gunfight, and there's this dying Archon, and Uldren's kind of hovering over him, crying over him. Does he wish it? Yes, he wishes to save this thing. And that's how Fikrul becomes the first Scorn. But in this, from this point of view, Cade says he killed him. Like that's the golden gun that left bullet holes through him. So presumably Cade shot down this fanatic, Fikrul the fanatic, and believed that he was dead. And Variks even says here, who is Pt.6 if not reliable? Like he may be nuts, but he gets the job done.
Yeah.
He will get the job done. That's what Pt.6 is all about. And then of course, he just kind of leaves them to their darkness in the prison there.
Yeah, and Variks very much sees this as a win. He's happy. He's laughing to himself as he's walking through these cells of various what he considers abominations of their people. He describes them as they are not Eliksni. They are the true fallen.
It's almost like he sees this as like chaos quelled, right? Like like thank God we stomped this out before it got too fanatical, like too anarchistic. Like he definitely sees this as a good thing to see all these Scorn barons in their prison cells.
So now we see what I guess would be the event of the end of the Destiny 2 vanilla campaign. And that is the Traveler being released from its imprisonment under the hands of Gaul by reawakening. And there's this big burst of light that cascades over the entire universe. Solar system,
I think universe. It definitely goes way the hell out there. Who knows where those pyramid ships were looming when it finally washed over them.
Right. So we have this big event, which is pretty hard to ignore. Like everybody saw it, and including Variks, and we get to see a little bit of his thoughts on that and kind of where where that leads him. So this is the next chapter, which is called Job Undone. And it goes like this. In the prison of elders security hub, Variks brooded. When the great machine woke, he had been sure he felt something deep within him stir. He had hoped it would give him answers, power, anything. All it did was remind him how far he had fallen. He slammed a fist on his console, watching the denizens of the prison claw at their cell walls. No, not nothing. Worse than nothing. Now he had doubt. His goal had always ever been a simple one. The banner of house judgment, the calling to which he had been born. Keep his people together. With the light now streaming across the system and nothing to show for it, no queen, no heiress or Osiris, and no sign of the great machine remembering the Eliksni. What was there to look forward to? Base survival, one day after the other, living just because he still drew breath. And where was the dreg strength in that? What was the... Variks, Petra burst through the comms. A Legion harvester has been intercepted at bearing 189. Capture teams are inbound. Survivors for the arena. Prepare to receive. Petravenge was all that was left for him here, and despite himself, he nodded at the sound of her voice. He had but one ally left after all. He keyed the comms. Yes. Bay 41. Bring them in. We'll meet team. We'll make room for new guests. His vocal synth burbled, needing tuning. Copy that. And she was gone. He picked up his staff from where it leaned against the wall and began the long walk to the bay, mulling his options, his information, his secrets. Secrets had protected the House of Judgment. The more knowledge one could obfuscate, the more significant one became. Secrets bred possibility. Secrets bred sway. But judgment, true judgment, required hierarchy, and the Eliksni hierarchy died with the fall of the houses. The Guardians had picked them apart, Kel by Kel, prime by prime. Now there was all but nothing left of his culture, only pirates and scavengers and lone wolves like the days before the Edge Wars. No trust, no honor, no way to be necessary. Yet one final hope among the Eliksni still thrived. Krask, Kel of Kings. The kings understood judgment, for together they had ended the Edge Wars in their people's golden age. Krask, his last hope to see his dreams of united Eliksni made manifest. He must make contact. And so he hired a bounty hunter named Grox to find Krask and remind them of their need for one another. Grox is emblematic of all that Variks despises in his people. Gluttonous, proud, and in it only for himself. And when they spoke, Grox made Variks pay with a litany of insults. Variks the slip, Variks the beggar, Variks the kell maker. But it was all for show. Grox would work, and it came for a mere 4 bales of etheric helix and a promise to keep him free of the prison of elders. The deal struck. Grox burst out in hysterical laughter. Ha! Consider job done, slip. Grox spoke in a low form of Eliksni, the only reason Variks employed him. You've grown desperate with your Kel gone, have you not heard? Variks sighed. King Kel is gone, Kelmaker. Dead at the hands of that insane Archon Fickrel and some awoken vagabond he calls father. What remains of the king huddles now in the dead zones of earth, under the shadow of the great machine's shard. I expect my 4 bales, and Variks kills the feed. The last link in the great Eliksni chain has been broken. If there were any who called themselves Kel out there, they would not know Variks, judgment, or the laws that governed the houses. The scattered children of the whirlwind were dead. But Fickrel survived Cade and his 6? Grox was a lot of things, but he was not a liar. If Fickrel was alive and strong enough to kill Krask, and who was this awoken vagabond of which Grox spoke? His mind reeled. So long as Fickrel lived, the reef was not safe. He scrambled through his comm channels, searching for the right connection. Master Cade, Variks requests to meet you regarding your deal with Petra. A job undone. And that's the end of that lore card.
I really, man, like the loss in this, like there's so much loss. Like that wave of light washing over, because that's another fantastic scene. It was the final scene that played out at the end of the vanilla Destiny 2 campaign, of the Traveler awakens and this burst of light breaks the cage free and engulfs Gaul in light and essentially disintegrates him. I don't know what the Traveler did with Gaul. Like, you false god, ha 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 ha! I'm the real deal, and Gaul's gone. But that light like washes over the universe. Like it just keeps expanding. And of course, one of the places it washes over is the Reef and the Prison of Elders. And for that to wash over Variks, like, that was hope, right? Like, that's hope is such a dangerous thing. It can be fantastic. It can give you meaning, but it can also be like the downfall of everything. Like, hope is such a dangerous thing, and for Variks to have this wave of light wash over him and then nothing, like worse than nothing. Now he has doubt. Like, now, like, this machine awoke and it didn't even recognize the Eliksni. It didn't even care. Like, what does that mean? Like, we've been chasing this thing for centuries, all for it to awaken, wash light over all of us, and not even bat an eye, not even try any type of contact or bring the Eliksni's golden age back or anything. It's just nothing. And so now you have this lone Eliksni, this truly lone Eliksni, who obviously is very, very versed in the old ways, thinking, okay, there's at least one Kel out there. One more thing, the Kel of Kings. This guy knows the old ways. He can help. We can get the Eliksni people back on track. There's still hope. And while talking with his little bounty hunter guy, the bounty hunter guy lets slip, oh yeah, he's dead. Fickle's alive. Like, blah blah blah. And so, like, all of that, like those two things of like Kel of House Kings is dead, and Fickrel is alive. Like, those two things are like the giant FU to Variks, because with the one, that's the last hope of his people being Eliksni again, like to be the old ways. With the death of the Kel of Kings, like that truly is the end. And now, and Variks says it here, where he's like, no Kel, no anything is going to know anything of House Judgment other than what they've been told through stories. Like, this is all just, everything now is just kind of hearsay. And then the other half of that, Fickrel is still alive. And that's where Variks is like, hey, Cade, we got a problem.
Yeah, and it's when the Eliksni first arrived in the system, and very clearly felt betrayed by the traveler picking humanity as a new race to uplift and grant power to that it never had with the
Yeah.
Eliksni. But I wonder if in the back of their minds, because when they came upon it, it was sleeping, or they could have presumed even dead. There are
Sure.
multiple references in the lore of it. The city that sleeps under the body of a dead god, or the shell of a dead god.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if somewhere deep down, a lot of the Eliksni that had come from Reese, or had heard the stories, in the back of their mind is like, well, it's not, it doesn't recognize us because it's not alive, or because it's not awake. It helped them, yes. It abandoned us, yes, but it doesn't know we're here now. And
Oh, sure.
that excuse isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
For Variks, not only has his god awoken, it is awoken and seems to have not remembered the Eliksni.
Yeah. Either not remembered or not cared. One of the two.
Yeah.
Like that hope has died. It's such a gut punch.
It is. And now this pinnacle of what Variks considers the fallen, this pinnacle of all the things House Judgment had tried to put a stop to previously, is still out there running amok. And he decides that his mission, for the immediate at least, is to get that taken care of. And so then that leads us into our next chapter, which is entitled Some Kind of Luck. And it goes like this. Variks hid beneath a bannerless cloak as he descended into Spider's lair. To wear the judgment sigil in the tangled shore would be to invite death. Even with the Spider's blessing to pass, he would have been picked clean and docked 2 times over. The hedonistic sounds of Spider's palace scraped against him. Shouts of victory and defeat reminded Variks of the worst of the Eliksni. His people's inherent need for superiority reduced to gambling for trinkets and gems. Variks searched the crowd, hunched down low. Just another vandal in the corner, the unmistakable crowd that surrounded the hunter vanguard when he was outside the city. He worked his way through the onlookers to take up position alongside Cade. The hunter noticed him, he was sure, but said nothing. Variks, for his part, was also silent. Watched as he lost a few thousand glimmer and a sidearm to one of Spider's bodyguards. Cade spun a knife in his right hand and sighed dramatically. Look, if we're gonna talk, you're gonna have to buy me a drink. They found a quiet place at the end of the room, and Cade settled back in the booth, waiting. You do great service to the reef, yes? Variks worked hard to keep his very recognizable voice down. It would be a shame for his local synth to malfunction and blare out across the room now. Capture barons, criminals, for Awoken, for Petra. Cade took a belt and set the glass down on the table, empty. Something hard around his eyes. Amazing how expressive Exos could be. Get to the point, Variks. Fikrul, the last scorned baron. He lives. Cade's horn cut an arc through the air as he shook his head twice. Definitive. Trust me, he's dead. Put a hot one through him, right here. He poked Variks right in the center of his chest. Seen on Earth, I have knowledge. I have information. You know Eliksni have ways, like Mithrax, like Pt.6. The warden realized his error as soon as he said the name. Don't you ever mention the name Pt.6 around me. Got it? Not unless you want to lose your last 2 real arms. We're done. Get. Your bad luck. The hunter stood and made to leave. Variks reached out and grabbed the vanguard by the arm with one of his mechanical hands. I am sorry. I spoke poorly. Please, listen. Cade shrugged off the arm and stood, towering over the fallen for once. Variks sat up straighter in the booth. Take me to Zavala. The Titan Vanguard's name was a punctuated, flowing stutter in his mouth. I have information. He will like what I say. You for bringing me to him. Cade blinked. You want me to take you to the city? No way, Bug. Not in a million. With a thud, Variks dropped the hand cannon he'd been hiding in his cloak on the table. A dull brown, bristles out the top, Ethertech trigger and muscle assembly. Cade's eyebrows went up in surprise. A gift of trust, memento of the reef. Upgraded, yes? Very deadly. The Hunter Vanguard tried to hide his excitement. Is that the last one? I haven't seen one of these in... Oh, the last. Not many left. Variks's voice was even, calm. Cade snatched the weapon from the table, checked the sights, spun it in his hand for a moment, feeling the weight. Grunted, satisfied, and nodded. Like I said, bad luck. Come on, you can ride with me. And that's the end of that lore card.
I love this. I love this scene. This idea of these 2 guys just meeting in secret in this bar of hey, we got to discuss some shit because you kind of didn't finish your job. And Cade oh, I finished it.
Yeah.
I'm Cade. I know I finished it. And Fickrell's like, all right, fine. If you don't want to talk to me, I'll go talk to Zavala. And Cade's just like, what? You're crazy. And then for Variks to produce this, I don't even know what it is.
I'm pretty sure this is the Dreg's Promise from D1.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
Which has not made its return to D2 yet, but the description looks a lot like Dreg's Promise.
Fits pretty well. Yeah, I'd say so. And Cade definitely enjoys it. Cade is at his heart, he is a guardian, and for whatever reason, and this is canonic, guardians have a lust for loot. Guardians just want loot. Full stop. It's somewhere in their subconscious or central coding when they get rezzed. Guardians want loot, and for this thing to be brought in front of him is like, oh, that's rare, that's loot, I will take, and now I will do what you ask.
Yeah. And I don't think Cade's expecting much to come of this anyway. From Cade's point of view, this is just, I just got a new thing, and you're going to get nothing out of this deal, so whatever, I
do like that one slip, though. Eliksni have ways like Mithrax, like Pt.6, and that mentioning Pt.6 set Cade off. That's
Cade has quite the history with Pt.6. That
which we'll cover Sunday.
We will
someday, not
we will
Sunday,
cover
someday.
Someday, yeah. We definitely want to do a Cade series at some point because he is super, super fun and really there's a lot more going on there than people think. But without spoiling anything, Pt.6 is the reason Cade is the Hunter Vanguard.
Yep.
So
that's a good description of that. And we miss Cade dearly.
Very much. But so Cade's like, all right, I'll take you to the city to meet with the big man, but good luck. And we get to see that meeting in the very next chapter, which is called Overestimation. And that one goes like this. Variks had never seen the Commander Vanguard in person before. The images he'd seen were either candid shots from agents or images from co opted surveillance that didn't reveal the man's true stature. Most of Zavala's bulk, he realized, was the armor. He was a lean man in reality, all taut muscle and sinew. But as Variks stood before him, he realized Zavala's poise and confidence, along with his light, controlled the space around him, lent him an air of authority Variks had not felt since standing in the presence of Mara Sov herself. Even Cade, of all people, seemed somehow different in the orbit of this man. Fascinating. Behind the light and the poise, Variks could see where the great Zavala's strength ended and anxiety began. That was where Variks needed to meet him and prove his worth. Vanguard Commander Zavala. Variks dropped to his knees and extended his hands, palms up, on the ground, sure to keep eye contact. A judgment gesture meant to acknowledge that a dominant force was present. Cade snickered behind him, but said nothing. Variks came to offer assistance, to help the Vanguard, the Guardians who have helped the Reef. Zavala stared Variks down. The judgment scribe saw much in that moment. Fortitude, intensity, desperation. On your feet, Variks. Zavala was quite used to giving commands and having them followed. Variks did as he was commanded. What do you want? A future for the Reef. Zavala's eyes were searching. Variks croaked and continued. Reefborn are close to doom. Zavala, the Awoken. Fallen, taken, Red Legion. All carve at the Reef. All claim its flesh. I made my offer to Petra after the war. His voice was gruff, but not uncaring. She made her choice. Are you saying something has changed? I say this, Commander, Variks burbled, and I have so much more to say to a true leader such as you. And that's the end of that chapter.
Variks definitely knows how to what would be the right word there? He knows how to play a person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he knows how to like appeal to them to kind of get what Variks wants out of them. So like to make this house judgment gesture of like bowing, palms up, this very open this to me it's like an open-ended bow or even like a submittal type gesture, right? And to see that and to do that in front of Zavala is very much like he is acknowledging Zavala's leadership and commanderness, commanding the room about him. Which I do have a funny a funny bit here, where the part where he mentions most of Zavala's bulk he realized was the armor. He was a lean man in reality, taut muscle and sinew. I have to imagine that's from his workout tapes that you can go check out in his office right now. If you go to Zavala's office, so as you're heading towards the annex from the main area in the tower, there's a little elevator on the catwalk that you take the elevator down, and that leads into his office. While you're in there, if you're facing the window, to your left, there's a bookshelf and a couple of boxes stacked up. If you jump up on the boxes at the very top, there's a set of dumbbells and what is essentially an iPod. And you can hold square and it'll activate a workout tape. And the whole time it's just Shaq screaming random things. Uh, and it's fantastic. So that is Zavala's workout, is just listening to Shax scream random things at him with a nice good pumpy workout beat behind it.
Yeah. So until we end up someday getting a real sponsor, we are just from this point forward going to be sponsored by Lord Shax's Z90 workout.
He said Z90
for Zavala.
Yeah, I'm followed. That fucked me up. Z90 workout. I like it. I like it. Once more, Guardian. Yeah. Yep. I just lost all train of thought from that. Just this idea of like, hey, you too can be jacked like Zavala. You want to come try? Come listen to Zach's. Damn it, now I'm all sorts of messed up. Shaq's Z90 workout. He'll pump you up, or you'll die. God.
More reps. Do more reps.
God damn it. This silly moment break brought to you by Lord Shax and Z90 workouts. God damn it.
We got to break up some of the somber here.
This is very somber. Like this is a very desperate Eliksni trying to just get anything accomplished, and at this point in time, I genuinely don't know what Variks' game is here at this point in time. Like he's such a lost he's just such a lost being in this universe of loss and hopelessness and I true depression, like true just, you know, what's the point of going on? It's survival for survival's sake, like because you wake up, like that's true depression. Like to me, that's what Variks is going through this whole time, is that like I woke up because I woke up, like and now I have to go eat because that's what I have to do, because that's just what you do when you wake up. Like he's literally going through the motions of everything, and now to basically come to Zavala and plead for him, like, hey, and I think this is also a part on Variks to make himself feel necessary, right? Because that was the big thing a couple of chapters ago, where he needs to feel necessary. As House Judgment, he was necessary to the Eliksni. Once all the Eliksni and all the houses fell, now what's the point? And so he's trying to find that necessity, that, you know, that keeper of secrets and whatnot. That's because secrets mean something. Knowledge is something, and therefore knowledge makes you valuable. Knowledge allows you to keep going on to the next day and gives you a purpose and stuff. So that's definitely what is happening in this office is Variks, whether he has information or not, or whether he has something in the reef or not, or whatever. He's playing the room. He's playing the person, Zavala, because he even said, like, here, Zavala the Awoken, like Reefborn are close to doom. Zavala the Awoken, Fallen, Taken, Red Legion, they all want the Reef. They all want a little piece of it. So he's trying to appeal to every side of Zavala, and it's funny there too, because when we think of Zavala, like any guardian that's an awoken that is now a guardian, to appeal to their awoken side is just odd. Like it's such a disconnected thing, right? Because like as a guardian, once you're risen, you don't know, like, you have blue skin and you have no idea why. The first thought is like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. What the hell about the exo that gets rezzed? Oh my God, my hands are made of metal. What the fuck? Like, you want to talk about a freak out moment, like, that's it. And then from there, you're just like, okay, well, this little drone is telling me to go, so I'm just going to go. You don't have time to even absorb the fact that you are awoken or you are exo or whatever. Like, so for Variks to appeal to that awoken side is just, it's odd, but it kind of makes sense, because, like, as the commander of the Vanguard, obviously he has access to the entire Vanguard archives and all the library and literature within there. So obviously he's right up on the awoken, and he's got to know that because he looks like them, that's where he comes from. He is an awoken. So that's, like, to try to appeal to that from Variks' side is very, very interesting there.
Yeah, and now Variks, by his own admission, has never actually met Zavala before. So, this, and Variks being literally the oldest Eliksni, perhaps the oldest period diplomat alive in the Destiny universe. I didn't even think of that. Like, he's trying to play his angles. Like, he
absolutely
is being very particular about the phrases he's choosing and when he's choosing them and why, because he's played this game with other leaders forever.
Yeah, dude, I never thought of it that from that sense, because I like, when you said it, I started thinking, well, what about Mithrax? What about they were born during the whirlwind? Like,
yeah,
Variks has literally been around since pre Reese Golden Age.
Mm-hmm.
Every other Kel, every other Archon, every other Baron, every other everything is dead.
Well, with the exception of Aramis.
Oh.
We know that Aramis also was in Reese, at least during the Golden Age, pre-Whirlwind.
And she is the one that hands off Raxus to, yeah. Wow. But presumably she's nowhere to be seen, at least at this point in time.
Not at this point in time, no.
So in Variks' eyes, he really is the last Eliksni.
Yeah. He's the last one he knows of that knows anything about
that's
their homeworld.
That's got to be, man. I can't get over that. Like, that's such a feeling of hopelessness and loss and loneliness and just, oh God, it's going to be another emotional episode, isn't it?
Maybe. But we're going to take those ideas and roll them right into the next chapter, which is entitled Unknown Space, where we see Variks in the midst of a dream of sorts. And this one goes like this. The light seemed to dance in blue over the horizon of unknown space, but all else was black. Tendrils seemed to grow with the light. Where they were reaching from or stretching toward, he could not comprehend. Fear gripped Variks' mind. The paths before him were vast, uncertain, and for the first time in his life, he could sense judgment turned inward. You must remain your own. You are the last Eliksni of House Judgment. The destiny of your people is in your hands. You will save them. You will stand for the fallen. A different voice. You walk among them because you have failed. The second voice is soft, yet so strong. Echo around him in the space, through him, like he is a string on an instrument. I walk among the children of earth and the blessed of the great machine, the one they call Traveler. because they have been chosen. For you, the great machine is a dark mirror. Variks felt cold, unlike he had ever known. Unbidden, memories rush past him. All he can do is hang on as the last days of the Eliksni play out in his mind. He and his fellow scribes passing judgment in their soft, furred robes. Then the whirlwind. The elders torn apart, the pillaging of the house. Variks kneeling before a window, staring up at the great machine, watching it vanish. The long journey into the darkness. His flight to run with the wolves, his pleas to Skolas, the pact with Fickrell to sever Calix Prime and secret it away, the Prime vanishing, and again Fickrell on the horizon, preparing to give the fallen what they so rightfully deserve. There is only one path left for you here, in a place where everything dies and begins anew. And with that, a new power burned, affording him the strength to rise again. Judgment cast, and the screaming pulse of the prison alarm stirs Variks awake. On the comms, he hears Petra's voice. Cade had returned. And that's the end of that chapter.
Dreams are so fucky. That's all there is to it. Like, dreams are fucky. It's such an odd thing. Like, I don't know. I think more than just humans dream. Yeah, because I've watched my dogs dream and chase bunnies and stuff. So yeah, it's definitely a sentient thing to have a dream. I didn't know if it was like a level of higher being to have a dream, but dreams are fucky, man. Like, it's again, like all this stuff here, like he and his fellow scribes passing judgment, the whirlwind, the elders torn apart, him watching the great machine disappear, chasing after it, running with the wolves, pleading the Skolas, and his pact with Fickrell, and all of this just gone, and now the fallen really deserve to be fallen from now on, and like it's just this like it's almost like acceptance, right? Like, he's just like, well, that's what they are. This is it. This is the end of days. Like, it's such an odd dream.
Well, I think there's a little meaning we can derive from this dream, and I don't think Variks is the only one in it.
Yeah, it's that second voice there that's like, first off, who's talking to him, and second off, like, what does this mean to him?
So yeah, and it's hard to understand or see it as clearly in an audio format, obviously, but there are certain lines that are in caps that are very much separated to be like, this is something else speaking to Variks, and those lines are, "You walk among them because you have failed. For you, the great machine is a dark mirror. There is only one path left for you here, in a place where everything dies and begins anew." Now, I think, especially because this voice is referred to as a soft, strong, echoing voice, and memories being forced into his mind, and then right before he wakes up, this unbridled cold, something he has never felt this cold before, but it gives him new power and it gives him strength, and he's rising up to do something, to cast judgment. I think maybe this was the Witness's first choice of an Eliksni champion.
Oh, shit.
I think this is the Witness, an echoing voice. The Witness has always spoken very softly. He's never raised his voice, or it has never raised its voice that we have seen. but it's a very echoing because it's got that like multiple voices at once effect.
That's temporal, right? Where it's like it's happening at multiple instances at the same time.
And darkness is tied to memory. Variks is unbidden, forced to relive these awful memories. And this voice is telling him, like, you know, essentially, there is only one path left for you. Everything has died and will begin anew. And he's feeling this cold and he's feeling this power. And
oh my God.
I think if he had stuck in that dream longer, the witness would have shown him stasis. Maybe not granted it to him, but given him a vision of what he could have been with it.
The most dangerous thing to give somebody, give them hope, give them a thing. Oh shit, dude, the witness makes so much more sense than even Mara or the Nine or Aramis or anything. Holy shit. What if Variks, oh my God. What if Variks had been the first, what if Variks had been in Aramis's place?
Yeah. I think the witness at least tried with Variks first.
I mean, to see the final thing, oh my God. That makes so much more sense. See, this is why you get all the theory making and I just get to like squeal over it in fits of squealness.
Well, I appreciate the encouragement, I guess.
That's, dude, I the witness makes sense. Like that truly does, because the whole memory thing, the idea of power, the cold, like all of this just genuinely makes sense. And for him to like call him out, like you walk among them because you have failed. Like you are a failure. Like to call him out on that, and then and then calling the Great Machine a dark mirror. Like, because again, it's just like Star Wars. Everything is correct from a certain point of view, and so from the witness to see the traveler as the dark side, as the bad side, as the that side is an abomination. Like, oh, I think you're right. I think this is the witness directly talking to him.
I think so. And this is all the way back in Forsaken. So like this is well before we knew who the witness was.
Jesus. All right. Well, you keep your smart theories and stuff going, Magic Man. Woo! I do like that idea that this is the witness talking to him. And that like that truly is like the like big like what if question, right? Like what if Variks had become the first of the stasis users for the Eliksni? That would have been,
things might have gone crazy. A lot different.
I mean, the level of desperation and depression. I mean, dude, look at Rook.
Yeah.
Look at the level that Rook went through his entire life. I mean, he blew up Lubra. He blew up a planet, his own planet. Like, all because his people like rejected him. Like,
it was a very similar state of just like utter defeat that he was approached by the witness. And for anyone that doesn't know what the heck we're talking about, go listen to our Shattered Suns episode. It will explain everything about Rook.
It's oh, you want to hear some dark times.
Yeah.
All right. So Variks has had this dream.
This dream.
Presumably a dream or a stern talking to.
But he is awoken by the sound of the prison alarms going off to herald Petra saying that Cade has returned. And we see what happens in the very next chapter, entitled 2 Cells. And it goes like this. Petra called for not 1, but 2 prison cells. Variks finished his ether, considering. Perhaps Cade had finally found Fickrell, and for that, Variks would need every drop of strength he could muster. His strides were long and slow as he allowed the ether to course through him, his posture growing taller and more commanding with each step. At the top of the Massic's wing, his hands flew over the controls. He prepared the 2 empty cells and ordered extraction servitors into place, all the while reveling in the thought of the judgment of Fickrell. Finished, he stepped back and waited. Snarling, yelling, the prisoners entered the wing. One in Eliksni, Petra shoved hard into one of the 2 cryo-cells. The fallen landed, weak, and Petra sealed the cell door. Variks was all too pleased to see the hulking, disgraced Fickrell, the lifeline of the scorned barons, his once trusted co-conspirator and great betrayer, seething as the extraction servitors whirred to life, sapping the heretical archon of his precious ether. Variks and Fickrell looked deep into one another's eyes, centuries of history passing between them in the space of an heartbeat. And Fickrell laughed. Unnerved, Variks stepped away as Cade dragged a ragged, humanoid figure, head bagged, face unseen. Cade unceremoniously tore off the hood and tossed the humanoid, an awoken man, into the open cell. "And stay there," Cade said. His joke fell flat. On hands and knees, the stranger looked up at his captors to reveal a familiar mess of crow-black hair, blue skin, and piercing yellow eyes. Variks. It was the face and the voice of Aldrin Sov, brother to the Queen, Prince of the Awoken, and heir to the Reef. And that's the end of that lower card.
The capture of the 2 great forces that eventually leads to something even bigger. Like this is like a scene of pure joy, I think, from Variks' side to see Fickrell captured. Like, haha, sucks to suck, bro. You got captured. You're back in your cell. With this whole time, this is a scorn now. Like, sapping him of ether, I don't think does anything.
Yeah, I don't think it does, or certainly not what it would do to a normal Eliksni.
Right. Like that's the thing. Like, Fickrell just laughs. Like, Fickrell knows all this. Variks does not, because at this point in time, Fickrell is he's the first of the scorn. Fickrell is a scorn now, not like of the scorned barons. He is of the scorn race now, because Uldren resed him as such with the dark ether that he wished into existence. And so presumably, and this is a thought we had on the scorn as a whole, presumably they don't require ether like a regular Eliksni would.
I don't think so.
So for these servitors to like sap the air of ether around him, like, he doesn't lose any strength or anything. Like, it truly doesn't do anything to him, but it's almost like he has to put on a show for it. And then of course the other person here, Uldren Sov, Prince of the Awoken, brother to the Queen, and heir to the Reap. Like, this is essentially their Kel now, but in this like super dejected, like, I mean, ragged. I don't know how to describe this being that's before him, just completely sapped of everything, but still kind of in a position of power on Uldren's side. Because again, Uldren knows, he knows that, or in Uldren's mind, this is definitely at the point where Uldren's been hallucinating, where he's seeing visions of his sister. We know that to be, Riven feeding him bullshit to try to get out of the vault at the heart of the Dreaming City. But to Uldren, on Uldren's side, he's like, this is everything. So I am, because I think even in the Uldren lore books that describe kind of the precursor to this scene of Uldren being captured and all that stuff, it very much seems like he and Fickrell wanted to be captured.
Yeah, that's the impression I get.
Like they want to be in this prison. They wanted to be near the rest of the Scorn Barons because, like I said, at this point in time, obviously, the events of the killing of the Kell of Kings has happened. So the houses are completely dissolved now. That's the final house to fall. House Dusk doesn't even, like, House Dusk existed to now no longer exist now. So essentially, House Judgment is the only house left, with all these random fallen just kind of here, there, and everywhere.
Yep.
Soon to be made into Scorn.
Yeah. And so like Variks is now stuck between this. He's been looking for a leader. Like this entire time, he's been looking for somebody to be a leader, to provide that light in the dark, to provide a direction for him and hopefully the Eliksni to go. And he would have seen that possibility in Uldren, except Uldren's now a prisoner, and this leaves him with a lot of questions and a lot of competing emotions. And we kind of see a little bit of the conversation around that in the very next chapter, which is entitled Reacquaintance. And it goes like this. Your Grace. Variks couldn't help but use the title when referring to Uldren, like a reflex. He looked into the prince's eyes. He saw a fleeting shadow of darkness dance across their normal, ethereal, golden glow. Variks looked back to Petra. Petra, avenge. I do not understand. I know. It's... Something's wrong with him, Variks. He's mad. Lock him down. Lock down the entire cell block. No one in but you or me. Speak of this to no one. As far as the system is concerned, Uldren Sov died over Saturn. Variks looked to Cade for answers, but the XO just threw up his hands in defense. Don't look at me. Prince Whinyface and Fickrell were thick as thieves when we found them. All I could do not to shoot either of them. Petra nodded towards the now royal cell, and Variks, with only a hint of hesitation, sealed the hatch, locking Prince Uldren in. Now, Variks, Cade said, smooth as ever. You let me know if Fickrell here ever comes up in the arena. He and I have a conversation to finish. Of course, of course. Variks noticed Petra's gaze lingered a little too long on the prince's cell. He could see she was troubled, even ashamed. Petra saw him watching and composed herself, back straight, all wrath. She met his eyes. He could see her trouble, her shame. Variks, my friend, was that tenderness Variks heard in Petra's voice? He's changed. His eyes. She stopped herself. Reset. Became professional. If he speaks, don't listen. He speaks lies. Terrible lies. And with that, she walked away, Cade close behind. The doors to the cell block slammed shut behind them. Variks stood there for a long, long time. For the first time in his life, he didn't know what the next step should be. Petra Venge and Aldrasov had long admired one another. There was an easiness about them when they were together, and a deep, if unspoken, affection. When the two of them joined forces in the field of battle, they were quick, effective, and dangerous. Theirs was a dance of death, and woe to the foe who met them in open combat. Variks wondered for what crimes Petra would have Uldren judged. As he reopened the prince's cell, he wondered if Petra would have Variks himself judged. Variks knelt before Aldrin. We thought you dead, but you are in my care now, yes? His arms carefully brushed at the awoken man, probing but gentle. Aldrin blinked and looked toward him, or rather, his golden eyes looked beyond him. Variks looked over his shoulder just to check. Of course, no one was there. Sister, Aldrin croaked through dried, cracked lips. What's to become of us now? And that's the end of that lore card.
God, that's got to be hard on all parties. Like there was a line here that made me realize, and not really. I guess I really hadn't thought about it before, but Petra says it. As far as the system is concerned, Uldren Sov died over Saturn. So, I mean, to all case and purposes and points and everything, Uldren was presumed dead over Saturn at the slaughter at Saturn when the Taken when Mara attacked there. So and if we're going off of a timeline of like a real in-game timeline, we're talking 2, 3, 4 years of presumably the Prince of the Awoken presumed dead, and Petra essentially forced into command, or forced into, not forced into command, forced into, well, I guess it would be command. Yeah, that higher level of command there. And even she sees something in him. Like, she sees that there's something wrong with his eyes. Like, there's something in them. There's something, and it said here, the darkness washes over his golden eyes. Variks sees it, and so I mean, everyone can see the madness taking over him. Like, don't listen to him. He speaks lies. So I would love to have been a fly on the wall in that ship ride from where Petra and Cade picked Uldren up all the way to the Prison of Elders, just to hear the crazy randomness that Uldren would have been spewing that entire time.
Yeah. I mean, even
That
here,
would,
he's looking at presumably a hallucination of Mara that is standing behind Variks and talking to her.
And just, sister, what becomes of us now? What we do now? Yeah. He's lost it. He's lost everything, including his mind. So yeah, it's and then I like Cade's side of this too. Like, if he ever comes up in the arena, let me know. I'm gonna come face him, because I have no idea how the hell he survived a golden gun and lived to tell the tale. Like, that's not possible. So even Cade has some concerning questions.
Yeah.
Which also brings another, that essentially means that the whole Prison of Elders challenge, the Challenge of Elders, whatever, has still been going on this whole time. But we never got to play it.
Yeah,
in D2.
I don't know.
I'm kind of bummed about that.
I don't know if they're implying that the tournament, the arena is still going, or if it's a like, hey, if you start it up again, and he shows up, let me know, kind of thing. Like, because I feel like we would have had mention somewhere in here of the arena, fights still being a thing.
Sure. Guardian's still coming out there challenging random things,
right? Yeah,
getting loot and stuff. Yeah, no, I could, yeah, that makes sense.
But so yeah, Variks now has Fickrel, perhaps one of his most hated citizens of the prison, and
betrayer,
and Uldren, one of his most confusing citizens of the prison.
He's and confusing is right. He even bows to him here. Like, he's like, he still thinks that, like, this is royalty. Like, this should be treated as such.
Right, yeah. But he has some words for Fickrel, and we see those in the next chapter titled Revolution. And it goes like this. The explosion of servitors snapped Variks away from the pull of the prince's words. He tried to move quickly, but one of his toes caught awkwardly on the gated catwalk and he stumbled to the floor. He lifted his head to see the extraction servitor lying shattered and lifeless, hissing as ether wafted into the air. Variks rose, moving cautiously, slowly, uncertain who or what might be loose. He checked every seal of Fickrell's cell, and then gathered enough courage to peer into the porthole. Fickrell was unaffected. If anything, he looked stronger than he did before. He stood there, glaring, a devilish grin plastered across his face. "Does it find my ether bitter?" he growled. Indeed, Variks could see that something was wrong with this ether. It was darker, tainted with something he could not identify. He straightened the seals of his mask as he examined the servitor's remains, fearing whatever they pulled from Fickrell could be toxic. He moved through the fog-like gas as if it were water. It didn't dissipate like traditional ether. It lingered, heavy and opaque. Variks stepped up to Fickrell's cell and activated the transmission mic. "Fickrell, asalil akisoriks," he seethed, using the high speak of judgment, hoping that Fickrell might still respect the oldest of laws. "Ha, Variks, you cling to judgment like rain clung to lies." Fickrell spat his words the way the houseless would. "You are houseless. You are filth. Is this what you've done with Calix? Served the last prime to the taken? Is that the blood you now breathe?" "Ha! You still believe I have Calix? Fool. Calix abandoned us, but my ether, it's true. Fickrell is no longer enslaved to the machine's ether. By the grace of the awoken Father, I have evolved." Variks looked back to the prince's cell, still open. The awoken Father. Variks ambled back to the prince. With each step, he heard more clearly. He saw Aldrin sitting up now, nodding, listening, peering into the shadows at something unseen. If ever there was a picture of malevolent insanity, this was it. The prince spoke. "Yes, sister, I see it now. The army of the reviled that you promised me." And that's the end of that chapter.
I do like that I mean this confirms it. Like, this straight up confirms it. Like, Fickrell's like, "Does it find my ether bitter?" It's just this this straight up confirms, like, Fickrell is no longer dependent on ether whatsoever.
No.
Like, if anything, this dark ether is pouring out of Fickrell. Like, that's kind of a crazy thought, right? Like, Scorn they have this dark ether about them, but it pours out of them rather than them using it to survive and breathe and whatever and ration and all that stuff.
It's like they're generating it.
Yeah. It's just odd. And of course, Variks straight up cusses him out in Eliksni. very, very amazed that you pronounced all of that. I'm intrigued to know what that actually means in English. But yeah, like, and he basically cusses him out, and Fickrell kind of responds in kind, like, "Yeah, I see you. I see you still cling to the old ways, like just like House Rain clung to all the lies that they spread, because like House Rain, they were the prophets, right? Like they
Yep.
they had all the prophecies and stuff like that,
Yep.
and so to have a bunch of prophecies be spoken and then for none of them to come true. Like the House of Rain predicted the Kell of Kells, and that never really came to fruition. And like in Eliksni people united and renewed, and that's kind of gone. So from Fickrell's side, like all of that does look like lies. Like they brought nothing but lies. And then um, Variks kind of accepting that and go, you're nothing. You're houseless. You're filth. You're less than filth. Like you're like what did you give the prime servitor to the Taken? Did you just let them take the servitor and now this is what's spewing out of it? And Fickrell kind of like obviously Fickrell knows that like that's not true, and so he's just like that's cute. Like you still have no clue what's happening, do you, Variks? Like, and Fickrell has such a higher understanding of the events that are happening, that are unfolding right now in real time, in front of Variks, and Variks is still just like super confused. Like I think this really is where Variks has no idea what the next step is. Like he doesn't. This is such a level of confusion to Variks. He just doesn't know anymore.
Yeah, and from Fickrell's point of view, like Fickrell even says, he sees himself as the next step of Eliksni evolution. Like
Yeah.
he literally thinks that Variks is beneath him, is a more
Yeah.
unevolved version of what he has become. And he says that the awoken father turned him into this. And somewhat scarily, Variks looks to Aldrin and hears Aldrin speaking to this vision of Mara that no one can see, saying, "Oh yes, I see now. This is the army you promised me."
Yeah. This is my undead army.
Yeah.
Aldrin's nuts, man.
Aldrin is batshit.
Aldrin is fucking nuts. He's gone. He is so like by the time. Oh man, by the time so from the point of time that we the Guardians see him last over Saturn to the next point in time we the Guardians see him in the events of Forsaken, he is gone. He is so gone. It's just mind blowing.
So the next chapter picks up an undisclosed time in the future. It's kind of like things have been business as usual in spite of having these two very high profile prisoners, until something happens. So we are reading the chapter The Spark, and it goes like this. Variks, ever the loyal, did as Petra commanded. Access to the lowest cell block was reserved strictly to the warden and the regent commander. Unfortunately, this meant that every menial operational task was left to him. Meal distribution, waste disposal, between the 8 barons and the awoken prince, his new chores left him little time for judgment. Thrice per day he visited the block, and thrice per day he had to manufacture excuses to the local Corsair detachment for why the lowest level of the prison was now off limits. Rumors swirled. It was not unknown that Petra and Pt.6 had smuggled some high-value prisoner, a humanoid, no less, a first for the prison of elders if the rumors were true. But Variks assured everyone, with the gumption to ask, that his judgment of the scorned barons was a sensitive process to be conducted in private. Petra herself did not help extinguish the scuttle. She was less than adept at the art of secrecy, and everyone knew it. She responded to any bold queries with a stern, "It is none of your concern," which itself was tantamount to a validation that some version of the rumors were true. If only she'd found joy in her Techian training. If only she had learned more from the Queen. Each time Variks performed his rounds, he asked himself what loyalty, if any, he owed to the prince, and each time he stopped short when he bore witness to the prince's ramblings. Today was no different. There Aldrin sat, elbows atop knees, staring into the same dark corner of the cell, face concealed by his long black hair, seemingly communing with nothing. I see now. Yes, that's good. So good. More listening, more nodding. Then that's what we shall do. And look, sister, he's already here. Aldrin fell into silence, visibly relaxing. After a moment, he looked back over his shoulder and through the porthole to meet Variks's eyes. Your Grace, Variks burbled. Variks the Loyal, Aldrin smirked. Variks the Spark. Did you have something to say to me, or are you content to play the spying crow? And there it was again, that fleeting pass of inky darkness that momentarily snuffs the glow of Aldrin's eyes. So Variks said nothing. Whether frozen in terror or simply at a loss for words, he could not say. Aldrin leaned in, placed a finger against his lips, and spoke low. I have a secret for you, Variks. I know you want to hear it. Variks answered with a single, drawn-out, and ever so slight nod. Your Kell lives, Aldrin whispered. He leaned in a little closer and asked the one question Variks had never been able to answer. Do you know where your true loyalty lies, Variks? Aldrin didn't wait for a response. His eyes almost immediately darted over his shoulder toward the shadowy corner that had become his obsession. Of course we can trust him, dear sister. He is the most loyal. And that's the end of that chapter.
God, this is shuddering. Yeah, so I mean, like, I there's a lot of interesting things, like the thought of like, hey, this whole level of the prison has been locked down, so every single task of it has to be dealt with, and like waste disposal. Oh, he's got to clean their poop. Variks, the House Judgment, last surviving Eliksni, has to clean the poop of the scorned barons and Uldren.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so like obviously like anytime something like that, like that level of lockdown where it shuts out everyone, all the corsairs that have been stationed there and everything, and even when they ask, like Petra's like, it's none of your concern, like pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Like that's kind of the level of secrecy that's happening here. It's like okay, well there's clearly something behind the curtain. What the fuck is it? And all we have is the rumors to go off of. So what do we pay attention to? But Variks, obviously he's down there daily, three times a day, in fact.
Yep.
And so he's constantly trying to spy on them, trying to listen, trying to figure out anything, any type of information as to why this mad prince is in this prison cell, alongside Fickrell and all these barons. So I mean, a very high level of secrecy happening in this cell block. And then for Uldren to actively acknowledge Variks and to your Kell lives, like Variks's Kell being Marasov, and then of course obviously the vision was like, hey, you cut that out. and Uldren's like, what he's cool, it's cool, man, he's cool, we're all cool here. So yeah, it's the insanity that's happening there, and for now, I mean, that those three words in the question. Your Kel lives. Do you know where your true loyalty lies, Variks? That is such a dangerous. It's so dangerous. It's a level of dangerousness that just to kind of inject that hope back into Variks. That's a bold thing. And then the question there, like, where does your true loyalty lie? And he's the most loyal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because Aldrin is very clearly out of his mind. He's very clearly crazy, but he's that dangerous crazy where he
Yeah.
still knows how to lie and manipulate, even if he's not all there.
Yeah. That's yeah. that I don't want to call it good crazy because it's not good crazy, but yeah, yeah,
Right.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. He can play a room. He can play a room or a person just as well as Variks can, even in this insanity, and he's
Oh yeah.
absolutely doing it.
So this leaves Variks with a lot of questions and a lot of like, he needs more info. Essentially, is what this comes down to. He needs more info, and he's going to try and get it through a few means. And we're going to see those in the next chapter, which is the Chain of Souls. That one goes like this. Variks admired his masterpiece, the improvised servitor chain that would finally reveal the secrets of his fanatical friend. Unfortunately, Fickrell refused to talk of the past, would speak only of the future or of Aldrin, his awoken father, who snatched him from the edge of death and awakened within him a power never before seen in the Eliksni, a power over death itself, a power to remake their people and thrive in a universe of light and dark that would have forsaken them and left them scorned. Variks knew these feelings all too well. It was here, in the deepest catacombs of the prison of elders, where he thrived, where he worked to rebuild the Eliksni. This was his home now, this workspace where he was free to explore the potential of the prison's inmates for future leverage. The emerald marrow worm food of the hive, the prismatic viruses of the Vex, scion flare wavelengths, each of these secrets had been wrested free within these dark halls, traded among his network for more secrets, or harnessed into weapons for the awoken. But the secrets of Fickrell's mutation eluded him. The power within was obvious. Scattered about the floor was the evidence of his potency, as well as too many nights of failure. Wrecked sentry servitors, dozens of deflated dregs, all pulled from the upper cell blocks to act as his assistants. Whatever this cold, unnatural cocktail was that coursed through Fickrell, it could not be transferred or ingested like the ether his people needed to sustain their wretched lives. Variks was all too ready to give up, send Fickrell into the arena to face Pt.6 and put an end to the legacy of the scorned barons. Until one day, during Variks's rounds, Aldrin spoke to him unprompted. There was a lucidity in the discarded prince's eyes, a clarity that didn't exist even before he disappeared over Saturn's rings. Aldrin gave Variks a fresh perspective. And so the chain, it was a dangerous gamble, mingling Fickrell's polluted lifeblood with traditional ether. These servitors had 70% of Variks's own ether reserves. If this failed, well, it wouldn't be the first time Variks had risked everything and lost. Variks pulled the lever. The hum of the servitor chain crescendoed, but all he heard was the lingering echo of Aldrin's poisonous question. Do you know where your true loyalty lies, Variks? But if it worked, perhaps Fickrell could be cured. Perhaps, if what Variks suspected was true, and Fickrell's corruption was related to the prince's affliction, Aldrin could be cured too. Variks had said as much to Petra, but she had refused to listen. You will not experiment on the prince. Our prince is ill. To keep him here, hide him from awoken eyes. Not right. Not right. I've made my decision, Variks. Variks's fingers flexed. Petra the loyal, he sneered. Perhaps the murmurs of Kamala Rior are true, yes? Petra glowered. I will handle Aldrin. You will not touch him. She turned sharply on her heel and strode out. Variks hadn't seen her since. He devoted all his time to the servitor chain and to his own private thoughts. That's the end of that chapter.
I like that idea that Fickrell has here, and the idea that, or not Fickrell, Variks has here, that Fickrell is tainted or needs to be cured. Like there's something wrong with Fickrell. Like he's trying to understand it, and then the logic of, well, if he cures Fickrell, then that whatever's ailing the prince is kind of the same thing, so maybe that'll cure the prince as well. Like I like where Variks's head is at in this little passage here, but I mean, we obviously, you and I both know there's nothing Variks can do, but Variks doesn't know that, so
right.
Variks does what he's going to try to do. Like he's trying to find that purpose still. He's trying to keep going. He's trying to find that new thing to be like, this is what I woke up to do today, and so this is his goal, is to try to cure Fickrell of this ailment, and in turn cure the prince and restore the reef and finally have purpose again.
Yep. And we see the culmination of all of the little questions, the little poisonous comments from Aldrin, and the mystery of Fickrell and this corruption, and the way that Petra is seemingly not wanting to get involved with it, not wanting to entertain the idea that they might be able to cure Aldrin. And we see all of these things slowly compile into an event. And that event is described in the last chapter we're going to read tonight, which is called Where Loyalty Lies. And that one goes like this. Variks's experiment succeeded, but not how he expected. Ingestion of the etheric concoction still resulted in fallen death. It was not by any means a life-sustaining substance. It was, however, a life-giving substance. Through the dark ether lingered like a heavy fog, it also seemed to reach out toward empty vessels. In this case, it found the dead dregs that littered his floor. It slipped inside the corpses like a slow inhalation, inflating them, stretching them to the point of boils and bursting, pulling them to their feet. The dark ether gave these lifeless dregs new life. They seethed. Their breathing was steady but hard and fast. They rumbled as if volcanoes lived inside their chests. A black fire rose from their skin as they burned this dark ether like a jet engine burns its fuel. What Variks really saw before him was hate-fueled rage incarnate, and the beginning of another whirlwind. They were no longer fallen. Fickrell called them his scorn. Behind him, Fickrell laughed and laughed and laughed until he abruptly stopped. At that exact moment, the scorn dropped to the floor, dead once more. Your scribes, your kells, your houses, they will all soon be forgotten, like the elders before them. Fickrell growled in Variks's precious high speak of judgment. This drew Variks closer, face to face through the cell's porthole. Fickrell turned his ear upward, listening, brought his attention back to Variks. Father says. The pause hung heavy in the air. Father says, you know where your true loyalty lies. And the fanatic stepped back from the porthole and waited. Loyalty. True loyalty. He expected a memory of Mara to appear in his mind, but instead he found himself thinking about the prophecies of House Rain, Kell of Kells. Days later, Variks performed his duties for the last time. He visited Central Control, ran a test sim on the security systems, made some adjustments based on the results, revised and signed off on the daily roster rotations. Finally, he had a private conversation with the prison's sole remaining high servitor. The prison of elders would not go without a warden. He did not speak to Petra. By the end of that day, the prison of elders descended into chaos. Your time will come, Variks. Aldrin sits in his favorite spot, gazing in his favorite direction. She told me so. She has but one last wish of you. No, Your Grace. Variks's voice was gravelly with emotion. It is I who has one last service for you. Variks left before he could change his mind. A klaxon blared. The voice of the prison's high servitor echoed over the loudspeakers, in Variks's voice. Security system malfunction. Emergency shutdown and reboot commencing. The place dropped momentarily into darkness, but emergency lighting quickly illuminated the cell block. All around him alarms sounded. Warning lights flashed, pneumatics hissed, and cryogenic fluids evaporated to fog as the cryo cells lining this cell block began to open. Variks moved as quickly as he could toward the exit, not bothering to look back, for he knew what he would see. The scorned barons and Prince Aldrin were free, as was every single resident of the prison of elders. Variks slipped out under cover of prison anarchy through the same secret passage in which Petra and Cade had smuggled Prince Aldrin in. There, the ship waited, loaded with the prison's ether stores. As he walked, he made 2 recordings to be sent out by the Scion's relays once he was away. For the first, he disabled his voice synth and began, in the deep resonance of high speak, to give commands. He didn't know how many would answer. Judgment's call. But he had to try. For the second, he turned his voice synth back on. They call me betrayer. I, who was most loyal. They do not think I hear the words bug, insect. He paused. Fallen. Up long strides, fast now, along the ramp into the ship, toward the bridge. A vandal in wolf colors saluted him as he passed. I hear the words House of Judgment always hears. No choice to keep the houses together. He paused again as he reached the bridge of the ship. Judgment always hears. The great machine stood in judgment. Eliksni fell to fighting, fell to hate. Emotion caught in his voice. Cannot stomach this hate. As he spoke, the ship's engines rumbled to life. On the screens, Variks could see explosions resonating through the prison, his former charges running rampant. His ship passed through the bay's barrier and began to move off. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be here. He drew himself up to his full height. And so I become Variks, the Kell, House Judgment, envoy to the Eliksni people. No choice, he repeated, chuckling deep in his throat. His voice was calm. Eliksni must rise, yes? And that's the end of that lore.
God, I'm like fighting back tears because I know the next sequence of events that happens. That's essentially the opening scenes of the Forsaken campaign, and it's the end of Cade's life. It's I'm not gonna cry, I swear. Oh God. Okay. So yeah. Yeah. Variks sees. I mean, Variks essentially helps create more Dark Ether.
Yeah, he reveals,
unknowing to him,
right? He reveals the way for it to be transferred from Fikrul to other beings, essentially.
Yep. And sees the first of the Scorn, and Fikrul is obviously overjoyed in this. Like this is it. This is exactly what he wanted. That's the whole reason we got captured. He needed Variks to do this. Like, yeah. Yeah, and then that one question ringing in the back of Variks's mind this whole time: loyalty, true loyalty. Variks is loyal to the Eliksni, not the Fallen, not the Scorn, not anything. He is loyal to the Eliksni, the original Eliksni that started on Reese, that had a golden age, that lived in the light of the great machine, that then fell to the whirlwind, that lived through the pirate cruise and the long drift. He is loyal to the Eliksni, Kell of Kells, the prophecy of House Rain. He turns his back on the prison, the Awoken, everything. Says, to hell with this. I will be Variks, Kell of House Judgment, the uniter of the Eliksni. Sends this message out. Like, I hear you. I every time you've called me a piece of shit, every time you talk shit to my face, I've heard it. Calling me bug, calling me insect, calling me fallen, whatever. None of that means anything now, because I'm Kell of House Judgment. I will unite the Eliksni people. That's where my true loyalty lies. And thus starts the prison break. Sets the Barons and Fikrul loose, and Uldren, and every single guest, I put that in quotations, but guest of the prison of elders loose. And that's the next scene is us, the Guardian, and Cade strolling into the prison, trying to put it back on lockdown. And I mean, you want an emotional scene, go YouTube some of those cutscenes from Forsaken, and if you don't cry, there is something wrong with you. That's all there is to that.
So with that, we are going to be done with our lore readings for tonight. How do we keep ending
on these really somber notes? Like,
because the Fallen have it rough. Like,
it's so it make me cry. It's so sad.
I know. There's good things on the horizon. things will get
I
better.
hope so. Hope is a dangerous game, my friend.
we know where they end up in game right now, which I would say is objectively better than where they're at in our tellings at the moment.
Yeah.
So, things get better.
Things get better. Things change. So yeah, well, that's our show for today. We do obviously, we have some shout outs.
We do.
Two of which just, the title of one, and then every time I see it, I just start giggling, and I can't stop.
So
merchandising. It's so fucking good.
Yeah, the first shout out for today, as Sword said, is entitled Merchandising. And
with 4 exclamation points.
Yes. Multiple exclamation points on that.
I love it.
But no, from a Big O Frank 76 on Audible, who says, these guys have surpassed my expectations time and time again. Very entertaining, highly enlightening, making lore connections you didn't even know you needed. Would love to see them get a guest lore writer from Bungie. Let's make it happen.
You are not the first person, and I doubt you will be the last person to make these connections of like, hey, Bungie, there's these 2 dudes doing this thing. Let's go.
It would be amazing
too nervous
if it
to
happened.
do it myself. Yeah, if it happens, it happens. I would love to just, I would love to just again be a fly on the wall in the back of Bife's mind or Mylan Games' mind or even one of the Bungie lore writers' room. Like, I would love to just sit there and just listen and soak it in. I would die happy in that moment.
Yes. As boring as it may sound, I think if I were to ever get a tour of Bungie and they would say, you can go anywhere and sit in on anything you want. I wouldn't choose Crucible or weapon development or perks, or I'd be like, I want to sit in on just a lore meeting. I just want to listen to them talk and see how they come up with this.
Yep.
But no, so thank you.
Merchandising. I can't not giggle at that now. It's just
it's wonderful.
It's too good.
It is.
I love it.
But thank you very much for your kind review, and leaving us all 5 stars, which is wonderful. That more than I feel we deserve sometimes. But thank you. So the next one is another review. This one coming to us from Apple Podcasts. This one titled "My Fave Lore Daddies," which I'm still not sure how I feel about.
It's one of those odd ones, right? Like I like it. I like it. That's what I think Bife started the whole lore daddy thing, and so now it's just like anyone that starts even dipping their toes into lore. I don't want to say dipping their toes. Anyone that does deep dives into lore starts to become lore daddy. Like that's that's the thing there, because that's, I mean, at the end of the day, like this is all storytelling. This is all, and I think of my dad when I think of storytelling, because he was the great storyteller. Like, everything was, back in my day, back in the 70s, blah 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 blah, and he'd always have some type of story, and it didn't matter if I had heard the story 40 times, I still listened, and there was still something to be had there. So I think that's where that lore daddy thing comes from, is that, like, the idea of a storyteller passing on information in story form to the next person.
Yeah, I like that. But so this review, another very kind 5 stars. Thank you very much. Comes to us from a user, Star Wars vs. Destiny.
I see what you did there.
That is a whole nother bag of worms. But they say, you both bring a new and fresh take on Destiny lore. Most lore dads just read the lore and list their theories, but the way you both bounce off each other is just so much more engaging and interesting. Keep it up. Well, thank you.
That's one of the things I've absolutely loved about this is it's one thing to read the lore um and to think of theories and to find connections and stuff, but to have somebody else to just like throw shit off of and just be like, hey, well, what do you think of this? And then oh, I didn't think of that. Well, now that you said that, well, what about this? And oh shit, well then what about this? And it's this nice little back and forth of like, ideas and theories and stuff. Myth comes up with, I mean, hell, tonight with the whole witness thing, I didn't even see that coming at all. But then as soon as he said it, I was like, that makes the most sense out of everything. That's brilliant. Like it's myth is truly the theory. I don't know what to call it. Theory fanatic, theory god, theory creator. I don't know.
Theory crafter.
Theory crafter, why not? That's what. Yeah, he's the true theory crafter between the two of us. I have some good ideas every now and then, and I have some hopeful thinking every now and then, and I make every once in a while I do my homework and I get some connections in there. But Myth is definitely the he's the theory crafter.
Yeah, but you definitely keep me on my toes, and I like the bouncing back and forth because there's lots of theories that I have come up with that would not have happened if we hadn't had an opportunity to talk things back and forth. So I think is absolutely valuable.
Yeah.
But yeah, so another shout out coming to us today from Twitter. This is from the Twitter user Dark Tanyan. For however much longer Twitter exists, I guess we should say.
I mean, we might have to address that soon.
Yeah. Yes. Still thinking about what the options are if Twitter truly just disappears in a week.
I have no idea.
Not really sure.
I have no idea.
Maybe we'll have to turn to something like Instagram or whatnot. If we don't have other options.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is interesting times for sure. But in the meantime, Dark Tanyan on Twitter says, in response to last week's episode, says, Eliksni lives matter. I'm never going to kill another fallen again. In fact, I'll be starting a GoFundMe to show my support for them. Love the show. You guys are truly an inspiration to what you can accomplish balancing family and work and having the time to do what you love.
I'm telling you, we literally went through Val the Disciple the other day, and as soon as we got to any screams, I literally turned around and walked away. I was like, I'm not shooting them. I'm not even looking at them. Whatever happens behind me happens. If they happen to not be there anymore, that's fine. I am not shooting those things. I can't do it anymore. I cannot shoot another Screeb ever again because those are undead Eliksni Smallin, and I refuse to do anything about it. If they want to live their last 5 minutes exploding in my face, go for it. That's your undead life. That's your passion. That's what you get to do. I am not stopping you from doing that, little baby Smallin Screeb thing. But yes.
But yeah, and say funny enough, referencing a GoFundMe to support the Eliksni, next week's community event, according to the TWAB today, is going to be rebuilding the Eliksni Quarter.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I'm logging in. I'm logging in every day. I'm doing everything I can. If you too want to help the Eliksni GoFundMe, go check out Bungie go check out Destiny for the next 2 weeks. Yeah, no, I'm stoked. I am genuinely excited for it. Because it's yeah, I'm excited. Yes. I'm ready to spruce up the Eliksni place. Finally get some walls for these people. These poor guys have been living in like emergency blankets and shit like it for like years. Like, come on, we can at least build them a few walls.
Yeah, so
we built Spider a bar. We can build a few walls for these guys. Like, come on.
So I guess that will be our second sponsor for the night. So we have Shax's Z90, and now we have the Eliksni Reconstruction Project. So support our unknowing sponsors.
Yes. Go ahead. There's more shout outs.
There is.
I've died.
But thank you very much for
Absolutely, thank you.
the kind words. And we do, as I've said a couple times on Twitter, we are playing this balancing game of like dedicating time towards this versus dedicating time towards everything else going on, because we're not content creators. We don't make any kind of money off this. It's purely a passion project. So
I still kind of think of us as content creators. I mean, we're making content. We're just not getting paid for it.
Yeah. So
we just do it out of the kindness of our hearts, and if you do want to start a GoFundMe for us, we won't say no.
We won't say yes either.
Oh shit. Fair enough.
But so our last shout out for tonight also comes from Twitter. It comes to us from a Linkling, and they say, "Love your work. You actually managed to ignite my love for the game again. After listening to your Eliksni story, I went into Deepstone Crypt and had a blast. Thank you for all your work. I wish I could rate higher than 5 stars. Want to cover Pt.6 someday?" Yes.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Yes, we absolutely do.
The man they called Cade. Yeah, we're definitely getting there. That is a future project. We promise you that is coming. Not anytime soon. Don't get your hopes up. It's not like, hey, Thanksgiving weekend, that's what we're doing. No, it's not anytime soon. We still have some other stuff that we're going to cover first. But yeah, definitely going to cover Cade and his life. Because anyone that's played the game now that are new lights, y'all don't know who Cade is. Y'all never got to play with him. Y'all never got to interact with him. So yeah, we definitely want to cover Cade.
Yeah. So that is the end of our shout outs for tonight. I will use this as a moment to say, if you enjoyed what you heard from us, and feel strongly enough to leave a comment or a review on your platform of choice, be it Audible or Apple Podcasts or whatnot. Rate us what you think we're worth. We always like seeing that feedback, and maybe you'll see yourself as a shout out here. You can also get in touch with us via Twitter for however much longer it exists.
I think it's only going to be like a week or two.
Maybe so.
The dangerous games are being played at higher levels than us.
So I guess get in while you can with those Twitter comments.
Yeah.
You can reach us at Myths and Stories, spelt the same as the title of the show. But yeah.
Well, a little bit of a scheduling thing. We will not have an episode. So this episode will be airing on our normal time, our normal Tuesday, and that's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving here in the States. We're taking Thanksgiving off. That whole work family balance thing. We are taking that week off. We will not be recording an episode that week. So we'll have a week there of no episode, and then we'll be right back the week following that. So don't forget about us. We haven't forgotten about you. This Eliksni story is far from done. There are still several episodes of Eliksni stuff remaining that we're hoping to finish up before Christmas break, which we will also be taking a break then for Christmas and New Year's, because again, work, family, hobby balance.
Yeah,
it's important.
Yeah. So just to add some, give some numbered dates to that. This episode will be releasing on the 22nd. There will not be an episode on the 29th, but we will be picking back up on the 6th of December, and on the 13th, and then there will not be another episode, or the 13th and then the 20th, and then there will not be another episode until the new year.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see here. I got to give a thank you somewhere. Let's see here. I guess I have to thank Variks. I don't know. He's at the end of the episode. He kind of turned into a dick to abandon the prison and just let chaos reign. But chaos reigns. I do like a good chaos every now and then. So thank you, Variks, for A, staying most loyal to the Eliksni, and B, for letting chaos reign. Myth, you got anything?
There we go. No, that
you got anything
that's
else?
it.
Alrighty. Well, I don't know how to address ourselves anymore. Last week I called ourselves Lore Daddies. I guess I'll keep that going. So from all of us Lore Daddies to all of you Guardians out there, we'll see you next time.